Welcome back. Well, when you look at the Roy Morgan annual survey of most trusted professions in Australia, more often than not, you find real estate agents down towards the bottom of the list, near the car salesman, and even ranking lower than journalists. But the peak industry body has long campaigned for better education, saying that they can turn around the public's perception. While the qualifications differ from state to state, a review into training standards in the nation's biggest property market, New South Wales, is underway. To tell us more, we're joined by John Cunningham, the President of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, and also Jacque Parker, Director of House Search Australia Buyers Agency and the immediate past President of the Real Estate Buyers Agents Association. Thank you both for coming in. I guess just firstly, tell us, what level of training do you need right now to be a real estate agent, John?
Well, there's a definition of a real estate agent is an interest you want to start with, because there are what we call registered salespeople who come as an entry level. Now, there has been evidence to show that people can get that within 2 days training. It should require at least 5 because you need 4 units of competency to achieve that. But like anything, it's been rorted and people are entering the industry with virtually no training at all. The next level is the licence requirement, and that takes a certificate 4 qualification, but again, been rorted to the point where people can get that licence within, say, a week when they're recognised with prior learning. Now, that used to be a 2-year part-time course or a 6-month full-time course. Something's gone wrong.
And Jacque, I mean, for a buyer's agent, what are the requirements?
At the moment, Bridie, there's a restricted buyer's agent licence, which buyer's agents need to have to operate in New South Wales, and that's a portion of the selling agent's licence. And we don't believe it's good enough. We believe that buyer's agents should have to do the whole licence, as well as an apprentice-style training under, supervision of another buyer's agents for a minimum period of 12 months.
So what do you think, John, should the minimum training standards be?
Oh, look, I agree. There's levels of competency that are ticked off by RTOs, but they're not really capable of doing the job. Our belief is the minimum entry requirement is 7 units of competency, which is virtually like a certificate 3 level. But we also believe that to obtain your full registration, to actually actively pursue the career, you need over a period of 2 years to attain your certificate 4 level. That's 24 units of competency to actually be in a position where you would be classed as an expert in your field. The next level, we believe, which follows the Northern Territory model, which is to move to a licence to actually run a business, to hold a trust account, that you have to do another 4 business units, and then you achieve an associate diploma level. So those qualifications really reflect the complexities and the changes that have occurred in the real estate industry over the last 20 years, which are not reflected in our qualifications.
It was interesting because in your submission, you actually, I thought it was great, you say conveyancing isn't just form filling and property management isn't just collecting the rent. There is a lot that agents need to be across, isn't it? Not experts in, but across.
Across. Look, we've got 23 pieces of legislation that the average real estate agent works within that environment. You go from things like the Privacy Act, the Dividing Fences Act. I don't think most agents even know it exists, but you have to go into an environment where you're dealing with a complex set of legal requirements in a contract for sale of land. Do you know what an easement is? Does this property have an easement? Does this property comply with the planning codes? Is there a building certificate required? There's so many elements of zoning and some horror stories around agency incompetency around these areas that you would expect as a consumer that the agent you're dealing with would have a reasonable knowledge, I use that word reasonable, knowledge across all factors involved in real estate. You're not just a marketer of property or someone who leases property. You are someone who is a trusted advisor and giving advice on people's greatest asset.
And the same, Jacque, for buyers agents, of course, as well. I mean, there's contract law, there's...
Absolutely. It's a very intricate process and it's quite complex, and you need to be able to trust the agent in our field, that the client that we're purchasing for, to be across all of those fields and to be sufficiently trained, to be competent enough to carry through the transaction to the end. Absolutely.
Given the level of training that exists at the moment that is needed, I mean, tell us, what are some of the stories that you hear back of things that have gone wrong because of the lack of...
Look, I think, the lack of training can result in financial loss for a client, and it can also result in poor advice and the client, ending up with a very mediocre deal or sometimes no deal at all. Years ago, I had a new entrant to the industry ring me up for advice. there's a form in a contract of sale called, commonly known in the industry as a 66W, which basically is a form that waives your rights as a purchaser to a cool-off period here in New South Wales. You usually have 5 business days. And every agent worth their salt would know what that form is, and John would know, nodding his head there. This buyer's agent asked me what was a 66W, and I was really disturbed by that. The fact that he didn't know a very commonly used form in a contract of sale, and he had no idea. What do you think his client thought?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, and John, I mean, what sort of, examples have you seen of?
Oh, look, there was one in Western Sydney where an agent took a property to market and subsequently sold that property, thinking great result, went flying way over the reserve price. What he failed to do was actually understand what the zoning was of that property, to understand it was capable of significantly further development. So a savvy developer picked it up, flipped it on in 12 months at double the price. It wasn't actually a case where he sold it to a friend. It was a case where it was incompetence. That person had an expectation. That was a person who was a licensed real estate agent, not just a certificate holder, who failed in their obligations to their seller. Now, look, these are anecdotal evidence stories in terms of the market, and I would consider that we're an industry that probably has a 50% high level of skill and competency. But in the last 10 years, it's just got watered down to the point now where the number of people in the industry who I would consider incompetent is just at an all-time high.
Just quickly on to the training providers as well. I mean, what needs to be done there to better regulation? Because there is the argument, that if you toughen up the standards, then, you're going to have less competition, perhaps higher prices, a shortage of qualified agents. What do you say to that?
Yeah, look, it's interesting that the number of certificate holders and licence holders in New South Wales currently sits at 44,000. That's almost double what it was 15 years ago. Now, that is an interesting component. However, in the industry, there's only about 30,000 people employed. So we have this massive churn rate of people coming along, doing these courses because they look attractive, they're not that expensive, they don't learn anything, and they're not capable of going out. They've been given a competency tick, but they're not capable of going out and actually doing the job, both from a perspective that they actually don't have a foundation of knowledge to work from, and nor they're like deers in a headlight. They really don't know what's going on. So the consumer experience has a massively negative effect. The people providing this training, particularly online-based training, are making the money. And so the red tape elements and all those things become a problem for the consumer. And we're of the belief that competition or the concept of competition is king, has got out of control because it actually enables things to be manipulated, and then you get poor consumer outcomes. Consumer outcomes are really the key here. That's what we're after.
Yeah. What would you say, Jackie? I mean, what cost to business from,
It can be a significant cost. In fact, I was reading yesterday, there was a survey done of agents themselves in Australia, and over 85% of New South Wales agents believe that the entry-level training to the real estate industry is inadequate. That's a huge number. And if agents themselves are worried about it, then consumers need to be worried. And I think this review will go towards some way in establishing higher standards and letting consumers know to ask the right questions of their agents to make sure that they are adequately trained and they've got sufficient experience to actually act on their behalf.
Look, we've got to wrap it up. We didn't even get to continuing professional development either. But John, I mean, it's been a long campaign for the area.
It's been 10 years, and we've finally got a government that's actually listened, who've put this review panel in place. So we have high expectations that they will listen. We're concerned that in government review panels, they can be hijacked by particular interests, and bureaucrats tend to sort of want to go for the dumbest down version because it makes their life easier. But we're not going to rest on this. We have just done a roadshow around New South Wales on the underquoting laws, and we've had 100% backing for our ideas. Every consumer that we've talked to has had the same thing. They believe that where we should be trained and where we are is just not good enough.
It would be great to get you back once we know more about what's coming in. It's been great to chat to you both again today. Thank you so much for coming in. John Cunningham from the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, and Jacque Parker, House Search Australia. Thank you so much.
That's right.
All right, we're going to take a very quick break here on Sky News.